Okay. I thought wearing my 100% handmade, by myself no less, meditation robe would be appropriate for this video. I've actually been using the new Fujifilm Gfx50R medium format digital rangefinder style camera for many days, to the point where I thought, well, you know, I want to have a personal case. So I sat down and cut the leather and made this very specific case to hold the camera with the lens off of it. I'm actually going to take it also too on a big trip to Idaho in the first week of December. But this is a review of that camera. Let me get straight to it. Same sensor and image processing engine as my other camera that you obviously know, the Fujifilm Gfx50S, which is a large DSLR, relatively ergo and size camera with a detachable vertical grip. This is, and like I said, I've been waiting for 10 years or more for a compact, affordable, medium format camera like this, and it is finally here. I'm so incredibly just tickled and thrilled and happy. GFX has really become, now obviously it's not a camera you grab and head out the door with. You're going to go, I mean sometimes it is, but I mean that's the reason why I have the XT3 here on my table. I never pack it up like the rest of my cameras because I'm always grabbing it. My GFX is almost permanently out now, but it's going to be replaced, not replaced, but replaced for, you know, grab and go with this, the Gfx50R. There's a few things I want to say about this, and I've noticed that other people that, and this is no slant against Fujifilm, that have been given this camera to use and test are not owners or very familiar with the Gfx50S. Like, well, it's a great camera, incredible image output, and the reviews are accurate and fair, but they're lacking in a lot of detailed information. I want to mention some important points in here that no one else has mentioned before in this full review. And I know you're thinking, well, this camera just came out, how could you do a full review of it? Well, I've been using it now for quite some time, days and days and days. I've gone over this camera front to back 100 times. I've already made 7 videos on this camera, tips and tricks and whatnot, and lens suggestions and little nuances of the camera. So I'm more than fully prepared to do a full review in my eclectic fashion on this camera. Get to it, someone's saying right now. Shut up and get to it, you tattooed fat guy, right? Well, okay, let me do that. I am just so enamored with this camera. I have absolutely love it. And by the way, too, everybody that's picked up this camera, and me as well, this camera is a lot more. You're thinking, well, it's still a relatively large camera. Yes and no. For medium format, it's incredibly small. This camera is very lightweight. When you pick it up, and anybody else has picked it up, well, they'll be the first things out of their mouth. My God, it's so lightweight. The Gfx50R is a game changer, as I've already said many months ago. Why? Because it's the same sensor and output as the GFX. Why is it a game changer? The medium format bridge too far for most people has been brought well within under the range of Pro Nikon and Canon FX DSLRs. How far below? Well, on average about $2,000 below the flagship FX Nikon and Canon DSLRs, $2,000 below. I don't know if you're familiar with how much medium format costs, but like currently a Mamiya Leaf Credo, $20,000 plus. The Hasselblad X1D, they've slashed the hell out of the price on that camera because it has many design flaws. It has famously horrific bokeh, slow startup times, and it has several bugs that can never be fixed via firmware. That camera has been, you know, on quite a discount now for some time. So Fujifilm now not only has the most affordable medium format by far of anybody else, it's also the best built, the best design and thought out camera, and also the fastest autofocus medium format camera. Not that any medium format is or does have fast autofocus. So medium format is not for speed or action. I grew up with medium format, but I take for granted that most people have not used medium format ever before. But medium format is not for sports or action. Although it can handle some to quite a great degree. I actually done a lot of moderate action of riders on horses that are going, at a good gallop at 30 yards and less, with several of the GFX lenses, of which there are 7 currently, and I own all of them and have tested all of them on the new Gfx50R. So you buy a medium format camera because I want people to be happy. I want this to be a detailed review. I'm sorry if I flap my lips a little bit too much at one point in time in this video, but I want to be very detailed on reviewing this camera. You buy a medium format camera for ultimate image output. I mean, you just do. By the way, the Gfx50R, I just want to call it the GFXR. Do we really need to say Gfx50R? I'm going to call it the GFXR, which is what I do call it and have been calling it. It is made in Japan. It's assembled, made, etc., in Japan. There's even a little label on the back of the inside of the LCD. It's essentially the same form factor of a large XE3 Fujifilm camera. It's essentially the same. Button layouts and switches and whatnot are slightly different here and there, especially the single / continuous / medium manual focus selector knob, 3-point selector knob on the back there is different, of course. The GFX-R is extremely simple, and by that I don't mean dumbed down relative to the GFX50S, which I use extensively and have owned now for over a year, but it is simplex. It lacks for absolutely nothing. It is elegantly designed through and through. By the way, I have no connection to Fujifilm. I mean, I'm not sponsored by them. I'll be paying full retail for this camera. This is a borrowed camera. I'll be paying full retail for this camera, the same as you and everybody else. So I don't want anybody to think that I take camera reviews very seriously, even if I talk a little bit too much at times, because I don't want people to spend money unnecessarily, and I want to be accurate and succinct. I take lens and camera reviews very seriously. Fujifilm, interesting enough, has been calling their videos on YouTube Precious GFX-R. Of course, we all know where the word precious is synonymous. We see that in like Lord of the Rings, and I kind of feel like Golem with this camera. It is a precious and dear. I've literally been waiting. I know I've said it already a couple times, but waiting over 10 years for this camera. I didn't know that Fujifilm would be making it, but I've been waiting for this for 10 years. Seriously, serious as a heart attack. Nobody is going to use the same battery as the GFX50S. Nobody is going to complain about battery life on the Gfx50R unless they're a lunatic. I mean, you have absolutely no issues. Here's the battery compartment at the bottom. Same battery as my Gfx50S. Nobody is going to complain about it. You have no issues with battery life whatsoever. Interestingly enough, and no one's mentioned this that I know of, the shutter is greatly dampened over that of the Gfx50S. I assume that is due to like rubber cushioning on the 2 armature bars of the first and second curtain on the GFX-R here, but there is less shutter shake, and that's important for medium format at slower shutter speeds, because shutter speeds are not the same. It's like, well, sure it is. 100th of a second is 100th of a second. Most people don't realize is that shutter speed is not the same thing as the time to complete that shutter speed. The larger sensor and the larger shutter assembly mech, specifically the metal armatures that are connected to those shutter blades, of which there are 2 curtains, take longer time to complete the exact same shutter speed. So I find it wonderful. It is not only much quieter, but I know for a fact that it is dampened over that of the GFX50S, and no one's mentioned that before. This is also important. Eye relief on this camera is incredible. I wear glasses. I would be the first person to complain about eye relief. You have incredible, I mean this literally and very importantly, succinctly, that you have incredible eye relief. It's wonderful. It is far, 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 far better than anything that you would have like on an X Pro 2, for example, a camera which I have owned for quite some time. I don't own it anymore, but even with my glasses, I literally have substantial eye relief. A lot. The EVF is incredible. It's not like you're thinking, well, we have an EVF window here. What is it comparable to like an X Pro 2? The eye relief is wonderful. You will never have to touch your face to the back of this camera to get a sufficient field of view. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, that little EVF on a rangefinder style digital camera, I'm going to have to mash my face up to cram my eyeball as close as I can. No, just the opposite. So you're going to really enjoy the eye relief on this camera. There's no lack of customizable buttons, even with the removal of the 4-position D-pad on other Fujifilm cameras. The top, bottom, left, and right around the menu button on the X-T3 or X-T2, for example, because now we actually have 4 swipe functions, and we also have additional customizable buttons on the Gfx50R. Here's one right above the Q button. We have a drive button here and back here, and I've also made a training video on this, so there's no lack of customizable buttons. And I'm not referring to the Q button at all, or the selectability of functionality within the Q menu, but actual physical buttons. There is nothing lacking that anybody's going to complain about on this camera. I love the fact also too that there's a clickable diopter, so you're not going to accidentally bump it. Same thing is incorporated into the X-T3 over that of the X-T2, so you do have to pull it out like a watch bezel and change the diopter adjustment and then push it back in, so you're not going to accidentally mess that up. Yeah, without the lens, the GFX is incredibly small and lightweight, like I said, enough to fit inside of a vest or jacket pocket. This camera is very lightweight. You have a customizable front command wheel. It's made out of metal that goes around the shutter release button, as you can see here. I've got training videos on this. I actually have it set for exposure comp right now. You can actually set that in your menus. I have it set to C in my exposure comp wheel, which I'll never touch again. And I can adjust that via here. You can customize this for ISO or aperture or shutter. Obviously, you need to have your lens all the way over here to C for command and set that in your menus to use the front command wheel around the shutter release button for customization for setting your aperture. But right now, and it's my preference, I have it set up the way I want for exposure comp adjustment via that front command wheel. Yep. Also, too, very importantly, I wanted to mention this. Now, this strap is made... Now, I know it's meant to go between your index finger and your thumb, but for me it's most comfortable here. This is a hand strap that is made for the X-T1. I've had this in mothballs for quite some time. Fujifilm calls this the GB001. They call it a grip belt, but what it is a damn hand strap. I find it comfortable in either position. It's more comfortable here for me. But this is made for the X-T1. I can't think of anybody, no matter how small or big your hands are, that you're not going to greatly enjoy this. I suggest really strongly of getting this. It's $50 on B&H Photo, for example. It's made by Fujifilm. I don't know who they have contracted to make it for them. But it is fully adjustable and is extremely comfortable. And like if your hands get sweaty, I've always used hand grips on every camera basically that I own or use. When your hands get sweaty, you're actually able to, let some air between the hand and the camera. Also, too, it keeps you from dropping the camera. And also, too, keeps people from snatching your camera very easy in case they want to steal it. So I highly recommend purchasing this and I make my own custom hand straps. I had no problem making a custom one for this, but this one fits so well and it's so perfect that, hey, problem solved. I don't have to worry about making a custom leather hand strap for this. Importantly, too, let me slide it over here. The Gfx50R, this camera, took me absolutely no time at all to become 100% familiar with. Its simplicity of design and elegance. I've found not a single thing to complain about. Either its ergos, or its interface, or its menus, or its button layout. Okay? Pinnacle image output and a lightweight and extremely affordable camera. As long as you nail the focus and exposure and compensation, there's nobody that will be left wanting for image output on this camera. Like I said, same sensor and image processing engine is found in the GFX50S. Every person that's not seen, people look at JPEG images of this camera online, like, well, that's interesting, but my 35mm can do the same thing. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I mean, this is from like 60 yards away. I can count every stitch, and I can even go on more because Google only lets you zoom in 4 times. I can count every stitch on her glove and her jacket. Anybody that's seen like an untouched RAW file, they zoom in and in and in. It's stunning. There's just no denying it. I don't care if you hate or love the camera or the idea, but no one is going to complain that is not completely insane about the image output on a medium format Fujifilm Gfx-R or the 50S, since it's the same sensor and image output. It's just, that's what you buy this camera for. Honestly, and that's the reason why I made this little case, and I've got a little pouch for my, and also too, here we go, this is also my perfect little go-to rig, which is why I keep it on this table, is the X Pro trigger and Godox 685 speedlight, radio TTL, wireless HSS and TTL. This is a perfect little package. This camera with this lens and possibly one other lens, a speedlight and Godox radio trigger. I mean, to me, that's just heaven and perfection. I've had so much fun using this camera for the past week. You zoom out. A very beautiful girl on the horsey back there. A GFX image. Right? Some people said, I don't, jokingly, a lot of people actually talked about this image, and they said, well, something's wrong with the skin tones on this camera because she looks really red. It's like, well, yeah, it was extremely cold out that day. She's freezing to death. Of course her skin is red. It's just straight out of camera, raw, lossless, compressed 14-bit, obviously, from the GFX. Yeah, with radio trigger and speedlight, the GFX, you have literally the ultimate image tool that fits with no complaint in an already full backpack. You know, if you got a full backpack and you're heading somewhere, I mean, you have no issues. No one should ever travel with a camera with the lens attached, by the way. You know, that's a travel faux pas. Even with a full backpack, I mean, stuffing a speedlight and a radio trigger, this lens and that camera, excuse me, you know, in a full backpack, no complaints at all. The camera is very lightweight. The Gfx-R will immediately become the image output standard for fine art photography and greatly increase the accessibility to the photographic public to own medium format. Medium format has always been in the upper strata. You had to justify buying it because you're doing hardcore product, commercial work. It's like, you know, it's no problem buying a $30,000 camera, but you got to be doing the work, you know, to justify it, to pay for the camera. You know, the camera has to be with your work, and so medium format was just in this stratospheric realm where people are like, yeah, that's beautiful image quality, but you know, I can't justify it. This is $4,500. This is $2,000 below the average of a Nikon Pro DSLR, FX DSLR, and Canon Pro FX DSLR. $2,000 below that. Okay, medium format is never going to win speed competitions for hardcore sports and action, okay? I'll be perfectly honest with you. I mean, flat out honest with you. You buy this for UIO, Ultimate Image Output, and that's exactly what the hell it does. I mean, it just creates crotch-melting images, and this is unprocessed. I've had people download this image and process it, and amazing results. I just wanted people to see the untouched raw output from this camera system, the entire GFX line. Any idiot, by the way, and I need to make this statement, I have to be kind of crude about it because I've seen so many people that just don't know what the hell medium format is. Any idiot who complains about lack of video capabilities or autofocus speed is the same sort of fool who would complain about a 100-ton mining ore mover only getting 2 miles per gallon on gas and 25 miles per hour maximum speed. There's this huge Komatsu earth mover. I think each tire is $80,000. You actually have to go up 2 flights of stairs to get into the cab. It's millions and millions of dollars. It's insanely slow, and it, like I said, 2 miles per gallon. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. Medium format has never been for speed demons. It's not made for that. I've done plenty sufficient moderate speed with this camera. Like I said, 60 yards, horses galloping at a substantial speed. You know, really good hit rate. But medium format is not for speed. Okay? You don't buy it for that. You buy it for the same thing people tell me when I, you know, posted like 5 or 10 images out of the GFX-R. They're like, they just go, oh my God! Oh my God, look at that! That's exactly what it's for. And once you see that for the first time, I mean, just shut up. You've already got a camera for, you know, presumably anyway, for your, you know, do you have issues with, you know, models not posing the way you want? You know, that they don't have any autofocus issues there. You have an issue with buildings moving too fast on you, you know, or landscapes, you know, for product, corporate, business, fashion, macro photography, landscape, architecture, on and on and on, where you just want to see just the most mind-bending, beautiful, huge image you could just zoom the hell out of. I mean, that's just exactly what it's designed for. So, you know, any chatter out of some of the mentally challenged people to that regard and talking about autofocus speed out of the GFX series of cameras is de facto idiotic. The GFX is more of an eye-opening game changer than was the Nikon D4 when it dropped. Its output and capabilities forever and ever destroyed film's future. Literally, and I'll never forget that. I mean, I used film for ages in photography school, and a lot of people, the D3 was a real game changer. When the D4 hit, and those images, but people just like, film is dead. You know, this is it. Film is dead now. And that really, that whole tiny little era of time there was when film took a nosedive into a bottomless pit of oblivion. The GFX is a game changer. It has literally brought medium format, high-end output to the masses. It literally has. Trying to think of some of the things I'd call the GFXR. Domesticated fine art photography. Luxury medium format for the masses, mini dynamite, huge output but tiny price. So let's go on to section number 2 of this video. Okay, so let me go on to the last section of this review. I know I talked a lot in this video, but I really wanted to be succinct, and I like to answer any questions if you know, drop a comment below, and I'll answer it about the GFX-R. Been using it now for over a week, and I was just ending the first section of this up talking about what really to call the GFX-R. And I think I said domesticated, ultra fine art photography, and brought to the masses, i.e. domesticated. Miniature dynamite, huge output but tiny price, as I've already said. I used to shoot a ton of 4x5 film back in the day, i.e. large formats, I Calumet 4x5, and some 8x10. You need to put a cloth over your head, of course. You use a light meter, which I'm a big light meter advocate. And of course, you don't even use a large format camera without a tripod. That's 100% of the time. But you did that, you suffered all that crap, and nobody complained, because I had like a pair of Nikon F4S's. By today's standard, it's really junk autofocus, but back then it was like, yeah, this is great stuff, man. You know, none of us in photography school were like, oh my God, what a slow piece of, 4x5. You did it for one thing. That stunning image output, that just jaw-dropping, crotch-melting image output. Nobody complained about, and of course this is 1,000 leagues away from that. This is a lightweight, compact camera. It's the fastest medium format camera, and the price on it relative to everything else is stunningly inexpensive. Did I mention this camera is made in Japan? And the autofocus is more than sufficient to do moderate action. What do I mean by moderate action? Well, here's one example. The hit rate was well over 85% of galloping horses at 30 yards to 60 yards, going at a decent click, and that was always shooting wide open at the widest aperture possible. No problem with the hit rate on that. I call that moderate action. So the GFX, that was both using the 45mm, but this one was the 250mm f4 lens. So for moderate action, that's saying a lot. The GFX-R is the very same thing as my 4x5 large format camera, literally turned upside down on its head. The same incredible image output, but smaller than an FX camera. And like I said, $2,000 cheaper than a Pro Nikon Canon body. I want to state something else right after this and give you my review, my final verdict on this camera. And you're going to say, why do you rate this camera so high? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because the devil is in the details. I rate this GFX. And by the way, I've been using this camera for a hair over a week. It's not like I'm still suffering from, you know, new toy syndrome, right? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I got it in my hands. I rate this Gfx50R at 100% because it does exactly what it was designed to do. All these fools out there that are complaining about lack of super fast autofocus, what, relative to an X-T3? Well, of course. You know, that camera with its buffer, I mean, this is a 3 frame per second camera. This camera is the modern day 4x5. You know, you had some minor limitations. You know, you had to put a cloth over your head. You had to use a light meter. You had to use a tripod. It's huge and heavy and slow. This camera is nothing like that. But that, you know, the limitation, and I said I have every GF lens, medium format lens for this camera. I rate the maximum capabilities of it at moderate. Of course, if you set a focus trap too, you can do fast action. You know what a focus trap is. I rate this camera's capabilities for action at moderate action. Anybody that has seen the images from this camera, you just keep zooming in and in, like I said, and see every bloody stitch in her jacket and her glove. And this is from 60 years. Count every stitch. And I can still go in closer if I were to open this up in Capture One or Lightroom. That's what this camera is. It's $4,500. If you price like a Mamiya Leaf at over $20,000, that camera has the exact same damn sensor as this. It is a huge, bulky plastic squeeze toy. I almost bought one once many years ago. I was like, I really want the Mamiya Leaf Credo. I had no idea Fujifilm was going to be coming out with medium format. Not only the fastest, the best built, and by far and away, very affordable. Very affordable, the least expensive of all of them, by far. This is a $4,500 medium format camera. You know, also to the foolish people that have said, oh, this is an old sensor. You know, compared to what? You know, compared to what? Medium format is also not for incredible low light. Not saying you can't use it for that. But I mean, the notion that this is like a gritty night club photography camera, you know, that, no, of course it's not. The parameters of what medium format is, this camera is 100%. I rate this camera because it does exactly what it was designed to do. It is the most affordable. It's the fastest autofocusing medium format camera. It's extremely well built. The ergonomics, the layout, everything about this camera is precision. There's nothing for me to bitch about on this camera. I mean that literally. I've been going over this camera front to back, top to bottom for days and days and days and days. Everything I could think of in this final review, and also to the 7 training and tips videos and you know, and showing this camera and talking about it, other videos. I've left no stone unturned that I know of on this camera. I've gone over everything 100 times and beating myself over the head because I knew if I rated this camera at 100%, well, you're just a Fuji fanboy. You know, everybody knows. This camera is not for video either. Medium format is not for video. Fujifilm themselves will tell you it has video capabilities, but this camera is not for video. So I have to, you know, lodge a protest against, you know, a couple large sites that have, you know, done a haphazard and half-done review of this camera. They just don't know what medium format is. It's the same thing. This camera is, and like I said, the perfect analogy I could think of is like that huge mining ore mover Komatsu. It's an enormous multi-million-dollar beast that you have to go up 2 flights of stairs to crawl into, and it gets 2 miles per gallon, and the tires on them are like $80,000 a piece. That thing is designed to do exactly what it does, and they sell the hell out of them. They can't make them fast enough. Caterpillar makes the same thing. Komatsu makes them, of course. They're always sold out. I already know for a fact, not directly from Fujifilm, but through other sources, that the pre-orders on this camera are absolutely through the roof, because the people that have been in photography for decades, I know many of them, and they've told me so. They're exactly like me. This is the camera that they've been waiting for now for over a decade. The price on it is incredible. The build quality is incredible. There's nothing to complain about on this camera. It is very simple, but not meaning dumbed down simple. It is a very simplex camera. Now, comparing this between this and the other Gfx50S, what's the difference? Advantages: the price. It's much more lightweight. The shutter mech is dampened greatly on this over that of the Gfx50S. What are the advantages of the Gfx50S? The one thing I absolutely love about that camera most, and I wish the camera came with it, is the tilt adapter. It is so handy. I love actually shooting just like this, like an old twin lens reflex camera. That's another advantage of the Gfx50S. But like I said, it's the same sensor and same image processing engine as the Gfx50S. Oh yeah, I just dropped the sensor on the floor. I do rate this camera at 100%. I stick by that. I take camera reviews very seriously, especially when it comes. That's why this camera review is so long, and I know I've been very verbose in talking about it, but I've literally gone over this camera front to back 1,000 ways to Sunday. And 100% is kind of by definition denotatively perfection. And of course there's no such thing as perfection, right? Cindy Crawford's got her mole on her face, but that's just part of her perfection. There are no moles on this camera. The eye relief, by the way, is incredible. Really, really good. And I'll be the first person to bitch about that as a glasses wearer. It is really good. Your face never needs to touch this camera, not even close. To have a perfectly wonderful, is like, well, I'm straining it here at this distance. No. I mean, my face is backed way the hell back off the camera. I can see perfectly fine everything right here. That is this camera's EVF. Also, too, I've noticed the package deals that Fujifilm has got where you get basically nearly $1,000 off on some select lenses. I have no affiliate links. I'm not going to post any affiliate links, but that's an incredible deal. And let's be honest. You buy the X-T3 for many reasons, but one of which is its incredible buffer and its eye autofocus. It does action and sports really damn well. That's exactly what it's designed for. It's designed for lots of things, okay? That's exactly what this, and I rated this camera incredibly high. Nobody's bitched at me about how I rated this camera. I said this is the best value camera ever made, period. Mirrorless or DSLR or otherwise. It's just freaking incredible. $1,500. It's amazing. This camera has incredible sports action capabilities. The same thing with like a Nikon D5. Okay? This camera is exactly what it's designed for in every way, shape, and form with no deficiencies. It's like, well, is this a dumbed down Gfx50S? No. The price is incredible on this camera. It's unbelievably incredible. The shutter mech is dampened. Actually, the touch to autofocus works and responds incredibly well. People think, well, the D-pad is missing, so we got 4 function buttons missing. No, they're actually been replaced by this one, 4 swipe functions for functionality, and an additional function button on top and in the rear, so you're not going to lack for any button function capability, assignment, and customization. Nobody is going to bitch about the battery life on this camera. Additionally, so even though it's UHS-2 rated, nobody should be buying the super fast and expensive UHS-2 cards for this camera. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this camera does not need those fast-ass cards. Okay? Even at 3 frames per second, you still don't need, and most people are not doing burst photography. Almost nobody's going to be doing burst photography with this camera. People that buy this camera, 99% of which are going to know exactly what it's made for. You know, single shot, ultimate image perfection that is just mind-numbing. It's beautiful. You don't need fast cards with this camera. Amazingly enough, the more expensive camera needs the cheaper cards, whereas the lesser expensive camera like the X-T3 does need the really fast cards, if you want to do sports and action, obviously so. Fujifilm really did nail it out of the park with this. They are going to sell the bejesus out of this camera. I've had enormous amounts of people contact me via email and comment asking me about this camera. I'm so excited to be an owner of the Gfx50R, which, by the way, I'm getting from Robert's Camera up in Indiana. I post no affiliate links. I get no kickbacks from anybody. This is my honest and detailed review of having used this camera for a hair over a week. I've been staring at it and going over it and over and over it again many times. I'm not going to regret saying anything I've said in this very long, verbose video. I do rate this camera at 100, okay? And I stand by that. This is my video review, okay? I don't sell anything and I don't get any kickbacks from anybody. Very, very happy to a level that on this camera, extremely happy. Actually, extremely happy is very inadequate and insufficient how I feel about the Gfx-R. I don't like calling it the Gfx50R, by the way. I like calling it the Gfx-R. I don't need to say 50. Everybody knows it's a 51 megapixel camera. Anyway, by the way, get the grip belt, as I've already said. The GB001. It's made for the XT1. Fits this perfectly and totally adjustable. I really do consider it to be a must-have. And I've got other tips and tricks and training videos and close-up views of the Gfx-R. So check those videos out. And thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, you can always drop me a buck or two below, because I don't sell anything. I don't sell books or anything. I've written many books, but all my books are free. So anything helps. I've actually been crushing my brain, very happily, however, on this camera. And I've reached the crescendo of my final review of the Fujifilm Gfx50R. Perfection, if ever there was. But this is my video review, and I do consider this camera to be a 100% camera. Been waiting for this camera for a decade. Seriously. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day.